Andrea Catherwood is the only British television journalist who's been to Mazar-e-Sharif. She went back there today and we were able to talk to her earlier. You went back to the scene of that mass killing today. Were you able to find out anything more about what had happened?
Well, we know that most of these Taliban fighters that were in the school had only just arrived in the city. They were, in fact, reinforcements brought in to try and hold Mazar-e-Sharif. Most of them had come from Pakistan. There were also some Uzbeks and Chechens. And it does appear that they had become trapped in the school. They had only just got here. Most of the Taliban were leaving, and they didn't have any transport. So that's why the standoff occurred.
There are reports here about British Taliban fighters that were killed in Mazar-e-Sharif. Is there any way that could be confirmed where you are?
Well, it's very difficult to confirm that. We spoke to the Red Cross today. They're responsible for bringing these 300 bodies that they've already managed to find in the rubble out, and they're trying to identify the dead. But they say that is extremely difficult because very few of these fighters had any identity papers on them. Those 300 have now already been buried, and they have no information about any of them being British. Now, there were also a number of prisoners there. We found 42 prisoners yesterday. I can now confirm there are around 200 Taliban prisoners, because the International Red Cross have actually made contact with 150 others. They didn't know anything about the prisoners that we found in the freight container, and when I told them, they were very shocked at the conditions in which they were being kept. They are now trying to negotiate with the Northern Alliance to get some medical assistance to those men and to eventually try and negotiate some way for them to be released safely and travel back to Pakistan.
Andrea, thank you. Here, the jury in the Sarah Payne murder trial was told that a single strand of her blonde hair was found on the sweatshirt of the man accused of abducting and killing her. Other evidence was said to link him to the field where Sarah's body was found. Adrian Britton reports.
Roy Whiting leaving court this evening, having heard the forensic evidence which the prosecution claims is proof he murdered Sarah Payne. Her parents, Michael and Sarah, came to court to hear what was described as the most important evidence against the defendant. Timothy Langdale QC told the jury how police found a red sweatshirt belonging to Roy Whiting in his white Fiat van. He described how under forensic examination it revealed a strand of hair from 8-year-old Sarah. It provided a full DNA profile and proved conclusively, he said, that Sarah had been in Whiting's van. To the court, Mr. Langdale further claimed that if the hair was not Sarah's, then the chance of obtaining such a scientific match was 1 in a billion. In the dock, Roy Whiting, who cannot be visually identified for legal reasons, heard the prosecution claim how other forensic evidence linked him to the scene where Sarah's body was found, a field in West Sussex, 11 miles from where she disappeared. On strands of her hair in the earth, it's alleged 11 fibres were discovered, matching material from Roy Whiting's sweatshirt, socks, and the passenger seat in his vehicle. Timothy Langdale concluded by saying that if Sarah Payne had lived, there would have been a real risk she would have described her abductor and the van. He said Roy Whiting was the man who seized her, killed her, and buried her body. Whiting denies the charges of kidnap and murder. Adrian Britton, ITN, at Lewis Crown Court.
A district judge and 7 other people were arrested by Merseyside police today over allegations of corruption. The judge is David Tapp, the most senior magistrate on Merseyside. Also arrested were 6 court clerks and Kevin Dooley, a solicitor from Liverpool. All 8 were freed tonight on police bail. Detectives investigating the real IRA bombing campaign today searched a disused pig farm in West Yorkshire, which they believe was used as an explosive store or bomb factory. People living nearby were moved away while controlled explosions were carried out. Here's Joyce Ahaja.
As anti-terrorist branch officers lifted the cordons in the Yorkshire village of West Ardsley tonight, residents were told they could return to their homes. For more than 24 hours, armed police sealed off these country streets as part of a major investigation into a dissident Republican bombing campaign over the last 18 months on the UK mainland. Army disposal teams searched this disused pig farm near Leeds, and they say nearby homes had to be evacuated.
The advice of the Army was that we needed to cordon off this particular area, and they carried out a number of controlled explosions.
In North London, 5 men were arrested at this house yesterday as part of the same operation, and a 6th man was detained in Liverpool. It's believed the men, all aged between 20 and 40, are being held here at Paddington Green Police Station. And tonight, detectives say they've been granted an extension to continue questioning them until Monday afternoon. Joyce O'Haja, ITN, Central London.
Primrose Shipman, wife of the killer GP Harold Shipman, said today she was still convinced of his innocence. Mrs. Shipman was speaking at the inquiry in Manchester into the deaths of more than 400 of his patients. Shuli Ghosh reports.
Primrose Shipman was driven away amid a frenzy of photographers. It was the first time she'd broken her silence over her serial killer husband. The 54-year-old, seen here last year, didn't want to give evidence today. She was forced to do so by a witness summons. Lawyers questioned her over 3 specific patients, including one, Irene Chapman, who was said to have died in front of her. In a packed inquiry room, Mrs. Shipman denied that, but during much of her evidence, she said she couldn't remember. She did agree that she remained convinced of her husband's innocence and was doing all she could for his appeal. Afterwards, relatives complained her answers had been too vague.
We've not learned anything today that we didn't already know. Nothing new. I don't think she did herself any favours today, personally.
It was also suggested Mrs. Shipman had been with her husband after another of his patients lost consciousness. Elaine Oswald said last week she'd seen the doctor's wife and son when she was revived. Mrs. Shipman said she didn't remember.
As the hearing got underway, it emerged that Primrose Shipman had been granted immunity from any criminal charges arising from her evidence against either her or her husband. As she finished giving evidence, her lawyer made a plea for privacy on her behalf. He told the inquiry she has now said all she has to say. Shuli Ghosh, ITN, at the Shipman inquiry in Manchester.
Now football. The former Manchester United player Jaap Stam has failed a drugs test and been suspended. The defender, who now plays for the Italian side Lazio, tested positive for nandrolone. His Holland teammates Edgar Davids and Frank de Boer have already been suspended for taking it. Finally, Dudley Moore received his CBE at Buckingham Palace today from the Prince of Wales. It was a rare public appearance by the entertainer, who is suffering from a rare degenerative brain disease which has left him unable now to talk or walk. The Prince spoke to him during the short ceremony. Friends said he was thrilled to receive the honour. A reminder of the main news tonight: Osama bin Laden was reported tonight to have lost his right-hand man in the Al-Qaeda terrorist network, who's thought to have been killed in an American airstrike. And British Special Forces have been preparing an air base near Kabul today for use for military and aid flights. And that's it. I'll be here tomorrow afternoon and evening and all day Sunday from the ITV News team. Good night.